Right, well, thank you so much for coming. I'm Nadine, most of you already know me, but I'm in my third year at uni and I'm studying creative writing. And this project was actually inspired by a module that we took called Creative Visions. And in that module, we get to look at how we live now and how we think we're going to live in, say, 500, 1,000 years, whatever it may be in the future when things have changed. A lot of people tended to look at things to do with humanity, such as, say, world hunger or things that revolved around people. And while I don't think we should downplay that at all, the difference is with whales and dolphins, they can't turn around to us and say, I need your help, whereas people know that other people need help. And so I'm trying to do it on behalf of them. And so it is really amazing that you've all turned up because it's really selfless of you all. And I'm really grateful that you're here, so thank you. So, with that in mind, these are my aims of my whole talk. The most important thing is to get the word out about what actually happens. The more awareness people have, the more things are going to change. Without awareness, we don't have a clue what's going on anyway. So we need to know what's going on, so we're going to unfold the truth about everything that SeaWorld tells you, about the captive process, everything. On the program that Marion so lovelily gave you on the way in, there's a link to a petition at the bottom. We'll talk about that in a bit, but it's a petition that focuses on stopping dolphin slaughter once and for all and ending the captivity aspect of our lives. And we're so nearly there. It's on 99% now. So it just needs a few more hundred people, and then we've got that petition done, and that gets sent to the Japanese government. And then hopefully will be processed and things will start moving along. And I also want to show you what SeaWorld and dolphinariums actually are, because we see them as these wonderful Disney-like places with these bright lights and really loud music, which is great, and it's an amazing feeling, but it's not quite true. So all the wonderful memories you've got of SeaWorld and whatnot, it's kind of all based on a lie. So hate to kill your dreams there, but unfortunately that's the reality. And the main aim of the whole thing is to put a stop to the dolphin slaughter. And so there's going to be a plan to this evening. First, we're going to talk about dolphins. We're going to talk about just some fun facts about them in the wild versus their life in captivity. We're also going to have a look at the way that they're captured and just basically explore their whole life. And then after that, we're going to do a 15-minute break where you can go to the terrace bar, which, if none of you know, is just out this door, up the stairs, and on the right. And you can buy yourself a drink there. You're not allowed to bring drinks back in here, though. For some reason, the university is really hot and all of that. I say whilst there are loads of cakes at the back of the room, but still. And after the break, we're going to focus on whales. And while a lot of the focus on dolphins is about how they get into captivity, while whales are very similar, we're going to have a look at their actual living conditions rather than how they get there, although we will touch on it briefly. And then at the end, just if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. So that's the structure for this evening. Also, viewer discretion is advised because some of the video clips are quite graphic and a little bit disturbing, so just be wary that if you're quite easily disturbed, maybe shut your eyes and keep the little ones on the iPad. But it's difficult to see that there's absolutely anything wrong with any of this. I mean, he's smiling, she's smiling, he's beaming, and the killer whale's grinning. It just doesn't look like there's absolutely anything wrong. It looks like they're having a whale of the time. But it's hard to see the problem unless you know the truth. So out of all of you, how many of you have been to a dolphin show, a whale show, swam with dolphins? Hands up. Yeah, quite a lot of you. Yeah, and would you go again without knowing what actually goes on? Like, if before I tell you all of these things, would you go again? Because if I didn't know the truth, I probably would. Yeah? Okay. I went to see Selwo, which is a SeaWorld in Spain, when I was about 10. It was my mum, me, and my nan, and we all got in the car and decided to go to Selwo Marina for the day. And it was this marine life zoo, and there were dolphins and seals, but no whales, because it was actually quite a small park, thinking about it. But at the time, because I was only 10, I thought it was quite big, actually, but it wasn't. And so we booked our seats for the dolphin show. We sat down, and then the music came on, and these dolphins jumped up and hit the ball and jumped through hoops, and they looked like they were having the best time ever. They looked so happy. And I was sitting kind of on the edge of the seat in the front, and it was actually kind of like this shape. And I would say that their tank was a tiny bit bigger than this room. I thought it was huge because I was small, but it's not big enough for 6 dolphins to live in. It's ridiculous. But while I was sitting there, the trainer came over to me and said, would you like to go in the boat with the dolphins? They'll take you round and you'll swim around the pool, and then you get to give them a kiss and you just wave and be happy and show everybody that you're having a really nice time. And I was a bit scared, and I turned around to my nan and I said, I don't know whether I should do this. And she turned around to me and said, very characteristically, don't be so ridiculous. You get to do these things once in your life. Get on the goddamn boat. So I did. And it was amazing. They did exactly what the trainer said that they'd do. They took me all the way around. And then the trainer said to me, give them a kiss. And so I bent over and I kissed it on the nose. Can I just say, dolphins stink. Like, horrendously. They're wonderful creatures, but they do stink. And there was 3 of them, and I kissed all 3. And when it got to the last one, and this sounds absolutely ridiculous, and I do know what I'm about to say sounds ridiculous, but I got the feeling that he wasn't happy and he didn't feel comfortable. I don't know, I just felt this horrible, uneasy feeling from him, and I didn't think that dolphins could do that. So I just put it to the back of my mind because I was only 10, and I just thought, well, I'm going to be really popular at school now because I've been in a tank with a dolphin. And we had a photo taken and I showed everybody, and everybody loved it. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then when I was 13, I started doing a bit more research about it because I was doing a marine biology kind of project for school. But I was kind of pro SeaWorld at that point in my life, and there were lots of articles about saying how it was awful and how captivity was wrong and whatnot, and I ignored it because I didn't want to hear it because I didn't want that moment to be ruined by these horrible accusations, so I ignored it. But then when I was 15, I watched The Cove, which is a documentary with Rick O'Barry in it, who is the world's most famous dolphin trainer, and that changed absolutely everything. And it was at that moment that I said to myself, right, enough is enough. I am going to stop. My personal aim is to put a stop to this within my lifetime. And that's why you're all gathered here, because the first thing about it is public awareness. And when I was 10, I really didn't know that this would lead to this. I had no idea. I was a kid. So let's just step away from all the gruesome stuff for a little bit because it's quite heavy. And we've just started, so I'll ease you in a little bit more. This is a pod of Atlantic spotted dolphins. And they usually live in about 30 to 40 of them in a group. But scientists have found pods as large as like several hundred. So you could have, say, 15, or you could have 500. It all differs depending on which pod it is. It's kind of like a human. You have big families or you have little families. It's very much the same as us. But this is a very standard amount for a pod of dolphins. In places like this in the wild, they can travel to up to 40 miles a day. which is quite a lot. And they are constantly on the move. They hunt for food, they play, and they fight within their own pods. They're very, very physical creatures. They like to, they like to rub against each other. But it's their way of affection. It's nothing more than that, it's just affection. And in the wild, they spend about 80% of their time below the surface of the water. And that's because they are the most curious animals in the world. They like to explore things. And if they are given the opportunity to come into contact with humans on a boat, they will go alongside the boat and try and play with them and make noises and make a splash, and because they are just as curious about us as we are about them. The only thing is they do it the right way and we don't. In the wild, these dolphins will live anywhere between 40 and 60 years. But according to SeaWorld, they state that most bottlenose dolphins probably live 20 years or less. Does anyone know why they'd say that? If I've just told you scientifically. Maybe. Maybe. Well, it's because if the public knew that more dolphins exceeded this 20-year limit in the wild and knew that they exceeded it by quite a lot, their business would have a massive downfall because it's animal cruelty and people don't like that. It's just wrong. And 50% of their captive dolphins die in the first 7 years of captivity. So you've got 40 to 60 years in the wild, or 7 years once captured and put into a glass tank where they constantly see their own reflection. It's going to mess with your head a little bit as well. It's unfair. They die within 7 years because of stress. Mainly because of stress, being ripped away from their family, and for the captive process itself, which causes such a traumatic experience on them that they, unfortunately, dolphins aren't automatic air breathers like we are. Every breath they take is a conscious effort. And so when things get too much for them, they shut it off and they kill themselves. It's quite literally suicide. And dolphins do that because they're stuck in a tank and they can't do anything about it. They've been separated from their families and they're being forced to perform every single day to a bunch of screaming people. And if they don't do it, they're not fed. So they have enough. And that's why a lot of them die. In fact, no killer whales or dolphins in the record of SeaWorld has ever died of old age. They've always died of other things. Other reasons of death is disease and chlorine imbalance, because even though SeaWorld has been around for years and years and years, they still can't seem to get the chlorine quite right. And it's funny because I don't think there's any chlorine in the sea, but you know. As I said before, approximately they will spend 80% of their time beneath the surface of the water. And they explore the sea because they're very curious, like I said before. But in captivity, dolphins only spend 20% of their time under the water. They also, horribly, in captivity, they beach themselves. So when they're in aquatic shows and we're watching and clapping, they lift themselves up into the air as high as they can and with as much pressure as possible. They throw themselves on the floor. And we think it's a trick, so we laugh and clap. But they are literally damaging themselves on purpose because it damages all their stomach. And if they do it for more than five times, they could die. And they do it on purpose because it's a dolphin literally self-harming. We don't see it that way, and we laugh and we clap. But they're literally begging us to help them, and instead of helping them, we're supporting it. And we watch it happen again and again and again, and we do nothing about it. Also, dolphins aren't like cats and dogs. You can't take them new places and expect them to adapt straight away. I'm going to move house next year, and I have a cat, and I'm going to take her with me, and she will be absolutely fine. If I had a dolphin and I moved it to a different side of America or Spain, it would go nuts, because dolphins can't adapt to new environments very well. That's why they've got such a high mortality rate. If these dolphins don't die in captivity, if the ones that were lucky enough to escape this traumatic experience of the slaughtering and the capturing, which we'll discuss in a minute, they tend to die within the first 3 years because they can't suffer with the trauma, because they have this constant memory, because dolphins' memories are 6 times more powerful than ours. So it replays again and again and again. But why is it so traumatic? I'm going to let these guys tell you first, and then I'll expand.
My friend is so much fun.
He's always playing tricks on people.
He is so smart.
In fact, he's one of the most intelligent beings on the planet.
This friend can literally see through me. And I'm not kidding.
My friend races sailboats.
And always wins.
My friend has no problem hitting a high no.
My friend can surf waves 25 feet high.
With no board.
I'd like to see you try that.
This friend can understand us.
But we can't understand him.
He saves lives.
He saves lives.
He saved human lives.
He's always smiling.
But that doesn't mean that he's always happy.
My friend doesn't belong in captivity.
My friend does not belong in captivity.
He doesn't belong in captivity.
His home is in the ocean.
But my friend is in serious trouble.
In fact, he's fighting for his life right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Off the coast of Japan, dolphins and porpoises are driven to a horrible fate.
The most attractive are chosen for life in captivity.
The others are brutally killed.
Their meat, which contains toxic levels of mercury, is sold as food.
Majority of people in Japan don't even know this is happening.
Please help us end this senseless slaughter.
Please help us get the word out.
Please join us in getting the word out.
Help us get the word out.
To find out more,
Go to takepart.com/thecove.
We are their biggest threat and their only hope.
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 Right, so there you've got it. That's an overview of what happens, but I'm sure you've got a lot of questions because it didn't give you any information in detail. So I'm going to explain it all step by step. So a dolphin's primary sense is its sense of sound. It can hear tones with a frequency up to 160 kilohertz, with the greatest sensitivity ranging from 40 to 100 kilohertz. The average hearing range for humans is about 0.02 to 20, so it's a big difference. It's really obvious that they're quite sensitive to sound, and where this happens in Taiji in Japan, it also happens in Denmark and Iceland. Those are the 3 most famous places for it to be happening. The fishermen are fully aware of it, and they use one of their kind of superpowers to their advantage. And so they construct boats like this. Right, I have a laser, and I'm not very good with it, so bear with me. See the pole here and here? They are lowered into the water, and there's about 10 of them. And they all go out in the morning, because that's when the dolphins are most active, and that's when you'll find the biggest pods. They'll go out, and they'll find a decent size. Sometimes it's 20, sometimes they can get 200. It really depends on the pod, and it depends on the day. They lower the poles into the water, and they get these big hammers, and they whack it as hard as they can over and over again, which creates under the water this horrible wall of high-pitched sound, which the dolphins cannot handle. They flock together, and they swim for their lives. The mothers and the babies become inseparable, because obviously it's maternal nature. She won't leave them. And then the fishermen net them off because they've got them surrounded. They're netted off and they're left overnight. Oh. And here you can see like how many they can get. They're stayed overnight and the babies tend to die straight away because they can't handle the stress. Like I said, dolphins are not great with stress. They can't handle it, so they kill themselves. And because the babies kill themselves, the mothers then also do the same thing. So before anything even happens, a lot of them are dead. Sorry. In the morning, the SeaWorld trainers and Selwo trainers, Sea Life, we'll put it, all stand on the beach and they know perfectly well what's going on. Not all of them do. Not all the trainers in the amusement parks know what's happening. But the ones that go here to pick what dolphins are taken, they know perfectly well what happens after they go. The most attractive female ones, they're looking for ones that look like Flipper. So they're looking for adolescent female bottlenose dolphins. And they're the ones that tend to have children. If any of the babies did survive, they're ripped away from their mothers, and the mothers are put in a box where they are immobilized, they can't walk, they can't move. and they're shipped all over the world. A lot of them don't even make that journey. The rest of them that aren't shipped into captivity are all slaughtered, every single one of them. And it's inhumane the way they do it. They say they do it naturally. They say they take a spear and they get it just behind the blowhole, and that like demobilizes them straight away and they die within seconds. But it's not true. They just hack away and away and away. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And so this woman will explain it a bit more.
Tonight, we're listening to you. You, animal lovers, have been screaming on social media for us to cover the dolphins in crisis, and so we are. The clock is ticking right now. 250 bottlenose dolphins rounded up just now in the infamous cove in Taiji, Japan. Reports claim this is tragically the largest pod of dolphins to be rounded up in several years. It includes babies and even a rare albino calf. These dolphins worth millions to fishermen who've rounded them up. The baby albino considered priceless. It's horrific what happens here. These animals are priceless in themselves. They're living, breathing, intelligent creatures who should be able to live free in the wild. By tomorrow morning, these dolphins could be either ripped from their habitat and forced into captivity or just senselessly slaughtered. The horrifying practice of dolphin hunting was documented in the Oscar-winning documentary The Cove from Lionsgate Films.
By the time they get to the lagoon, they are totally freaked out, stressed out to the max.
Got it. Got it. You just saw Nashville star Hayden Panettiere is sobbing hysterically because she was covered in blood, devastated about what she saw firsthand in the infamous cove. Straight out to my dear friend Melissa Segal, who was in Japan, who has witnessed the dolphin slaughter in the cove. Melissa, what can we do? You know, everybody on social media is saying, do something, do something. What can we do?
Hi, Jane. I'm here in Taiji right now. We witnessed the horrific 250-plus pod driven in yesterday. We're just waiting right now to see if they are going to be selected for captivity and slaughtered today or held another day. People on the ground here, we welcome volunteers from around the world to come and document the daily atrocities that occur here in Taiji. People at home can also get involved through social media, writing their local embassies, and demonstrating
You're talking
at local marine parks.
The Japanese embassies. And then there is the theme parks, the marine parks. Without naming any names, tell us what the connection is between theme parks and marine parks and this slaughter.
Well, basically, Taiji is claiming that it's cultural tradition for them to slaughter and take these dolphins captive, when actually it is funding the slaughter. People supporting marine parks are contributing to the bloodshed here. Millions
and you can see,
of
by the
dollars
way, Melissa,
are being
you
made
can see
here.
the blood in the water. You can see the red you're looking at, and you've been looking at is blood, dolphin blood in the water. That's how much blood has been shed. So continue on. Theme parks where these dolphins are kept in captivity, that's the problem. They take the prettiest ones, is my understanding, and they slaughter the rest. Is that correct?
These dolphins are ripped from their family. They witness the dolphin family slaughtered in front of them. This is happening consecutively, simultaneously. It is not a separate thing here. People that support marine parks are contributing to the bloodshed here in Taiji. They're as guilty as the people that slaughter the dolphins.
Write to the Japanese embassy, get involved, join Sea Shepherd. Together we can stop this. Shame on you, Japan, for allowing this. Stop it. Stop it now.
Yeah, I know she's a bit much. I know that. I'm going to blame it on the fact that she's American. Okay. So that's the result of what you've just seen. You saw them all swimming around quite well. I'd say about an hour later, maximum, that's what the water's like. And sometimes hundreds of them just slaughtered. But I know a lot of people would ask me, why don't they just let the rest go? Why can't they take the ones from captivity and then let everyone else go? I don't understand. But the reason is because of money, like everything else ever. A fisherman will get $150,000 for a live performing dolphin, and he'll still get $600 for a dead one, which isn't nearly as much, obviously, but it's still money. And if they're going to do it anyway, well, why not? This process and this captivity kind of thing that we've set up in our heads is not about love. It's not about wanting to learn about the animal. It's about profit, and it's about money, unfortunately. And the fishermen even said, before everybody found out what goes on, they said, if the world finds out what goes on here, we will be shut down. And that's them. They know how wrong it is, but they don't bat an eyelid, and they carry on slaughtering hundreds of dolphins because they need money. So I'm going to read you an extract. The dolphin hunters drove the pod closer to the killing beach, trying their best to keep the dolphins out of our sight. Striped dolphins spend their lives in open water along the continental shelf, and when driven into the shallow confines of the cove, they panic more than most other dolphin species, which makes striped dolphin slaughters particularly bloody. Today was no exception. I watched the turquoise water quickly turn red as the dolphins threw their bodies against the rocks in an attempt to escape. Many swam at the nets in vain, trying to break free. Ropes were tied around their flutes, and divers towed the dolphins to the beach one by one to kill them. The rest of the pod continued to panic in the blood. They knew what was happening. They watched their family get murdered one by one. Up on the hill, the thrashing sound of dolphins dying was all I could hear. One severely injured dolphin momentarily escaped from the killing beach. It swam into the nets between two skiffs, desperate to get out. Every time it surfaced, blood came pouring out of a wound on its head. The dolphin hunters and the Japanese government claim that their method of killing is humane. They drive a spike into the dolphin just behind the blowhole, supposedly cutting the spinal cord and killing the dolphins instantly. This is simply not true. What happens at the cove is the most violent and inhumane death anyone could ever imagine. Eventually, the thrashing lessened until the last dolphin was taken out of this world, and the only sounds that echoed out of the cove was the laughter and yelling of the hunters. And that's someone who's seen hundreds of them. That was Heather Mills. She's a monitor who watches all these things that happen at the cove. So basically, children, look away. And that's God. He said it, not me. I love this photo. It's the best ever. So dolphins, we've just discussed, is sold as food, and so many people have said to me, you eat cows, you eat pigs, you eat chickens, what's the difference? You also eat sea bass, you eat salmon, so why can you eat all these meats and not eat dolphin meat? Which is fair enough. If I didn't know what actually went on, I would totally agree with you. I would be a hypocrite if I didn't know what I know, which is what I'm going to fill you in on now. So it's because of
half the people in the US who eat fish daily exceed the safe dosage of mercury. If you find yourself suffering from mercury poisoning, here's what you need to know to survive. Which actor on the hit TV show Entourage suffered from mercury poisoning in 2008? Was it A. Adrian Grenier, B. Kevin Connolly, or C. Jeremy Piven? Mercury poisoning, also known as hydrargyria, is a type of metal poisoning and medical condition caused by exposure to mercury and its compounds. Fish consumption is by far the most common cause of mercury poisoning, although it can also be caused by breathing contaminated air, being exposed to mercury vapor, such as in dental restorations, and also from the improper disposal of mercury-containing objects, like thermometers or fluorescent lamps. Mercury poisoning happens everywhere throughout the world, since it's an element found in marine life and is commonly used in everyday items. Exposure to mercury leads to preliminary symptoms that include skin discoloration, swelling, shedding or peeling of the skin, and peripheral neuropathy, such as itching, burning, and pain. It then affects your brain and central nervous system as well as the endocrine system, causing kidney malfunction. It then boosts your risk of heart disease, increases your susceptibility to infection, damages your immune system, and destroys stomach and intestinal cells.
I'm not going to teach you how to survive. You shouldn't be eating it anyway. So mercury poisoning is pretty much my answer as to why I don't eat dolphin meat and why you shouldn't either. Yes, I do eat chickens, I do eat cows, I do eat pigs, but I don't eat dolphin meat because I don't want to die of mercury poisoning. It looks awful. In fact, it's dolphins in particular that carry more mercury than fish, because I know you would turn around to me and say, but you just said you eat fish and it carries in marine life, and fair enough, but there's more mercury in a dolphin than any other fish ever. And you can have 20 times more than you're actually allowed, than your body allows you to have in one sitting if you eat dolphin meat. If you decide to eat dolphin meat, it doesn't happen overnight. It does it over time. Your memory will fade, your skin will shed, you will lose your teeth. It's one of the most common activators of cancer. Pregnant women in particular are at risk because a lot of children are born with birth defects. And this has all happened before. I don't know whether you've figured that out yet, but this has happened before.
In 1908, Shin Nippon Chiso built a factory in Minamata, a small fishing village in Kumamoto, Kyushu. The company manufactured nitrogenous fertilizers and soon became the major industry in Minamata. By the mid-1950s, Shin Nippon Chiso had become the industry leader in its field. In 1954, the Sanitation Office of Minamata City began receiving reports of an unknown epilepsy-like affliction which has since become known as Minamata disease. Since the cause of the disease had not been identified, patients were isolated to prevent spread of the disease. Minamata disease is a neurological condition. Mercury poisons the central nervous system, damages the sense of balance and motor skills, which leads to increasingly intense body convulsions and ultimately death. In 1957, the Minamata Disease Research Group of Kumamoto University announced that Minamata disease is a toxic disorder of the central nervous system caused by certain organic mercury compounds transmitted through the intake of seafood. They isolated organic mercury as the sole cause through a series of experiments on cats. In the same year, extremely toxic levels of organic mercury were detected in the human patients. The report submitted to the Ministry of Health and Welfare stated that the underlying cause was organic mercury in seafood, and the wastewater discharge from the factory was suspected. Afflicted patients continued to be found until 1960. A rash of babies were born with brain damage and extreme physical disabilities. The governor of Kumamoto requested a voluntary ban on catches of seafood from the bay.
Sorry. There we go. Yeah, and all this happens because of mercury poisoning, because people eat dolphin meat. And we don't know that we're eating dolphin meat because it's sold as whale meat, which contains a lot less mercury than dolphins. So it's labelled falsely, and we eat it, and it poisons us. So it's not just about the dolphins, it's about us as well. And I promise this will definitely happen again with the amount that people are eating. This is how it started the first time, and it will happen again. And people wonder why, and I'm telling you why. It's because of all of this. And so the idea is that you guys tell other people, and then the word will be out. And when the word's out, then there will be action. And that's why you're all gathered here. This sounds mental, but the reason for all of these things, the poisoning, the dolphin slaughter, it's because of captivity. They all tie back into this multi-billion-dollar industry of captivity. If there was no captivity, there'd be no capturing process, and they wouldn't bother doing all of that for $600 for a dead dolphin because they've already got a horrible reputation. So they wouldn't risk it. As a result of this, there'd be no dolphin meat, which means no poisoning. And so I reiterate, when you go through a dolphin show, you pay for this, which looks wonderful and happy, but you're actually paying for this and this. And as a result, I do not support SeaWorld. Like they said before, we are their biggest threat and their only hope. So we're going to take a 15-minute break now, so please make your way out and go to the terrace bar and get yourself a drink, and I'll see you back in 15 minutes. Nanny, sit down. Nanny, sit down, please. Sit down. Dad. Right, thank you. Right, I was just informed that I just took you somewhere that was closed. So, sorry in advance. I thought it was open till 11, but it wasn't. I should have checked, my bad. So, that's way better. Right, okay. So this section revolves around whales in captivity, and like I said, we've already kind of covered the dolphin capturing process. And so the whale kind of is exactly the same, pretty much. So we're going to focus more on their life in captivity rather than how they got there. If you came in at any point before I started, there was a video of a guy getting pulled into the water by a killer whale, and it was in captivity. If you haven't, here's the... Oh wait, hang on, sorry. Whale, come back. Sorry, I completely forgot about it, and I thought it was probably the best part of my speech. So here's the video again. It's also on mute. There's no sound to it, so you could just focus on what happens to him. You can't see it properly, but the killer whale's got his leg in his jaws. That's why he can't move. You can see it there a little bit. I'm going to skip it. And the killer whale, what he did was he got his leg in his jaws and then dragged him to the bottom of the pool, let him come up for air for a little bit, and then did it again. This trainer is called Ken Peters, and he's one of SeaWorld's most skilled trainers that they've got. Oh, you can see them doing that now. He's taking it to the bottom of the pool. Luckily for him, he was a professional scuba diver, so he's quite used to holding his breath for quite a long time, but the time that he was put under the water was pretty close to the mark. Sometimes it was about a minute and a half, and don't know if any of you have tried holding your breath for a minute and a half, but it's quite difficult. He tells everybody that he's probably the luckiest person alive, because that killer whale was minutes away from killing him. But can I just say that killer whales are not vicious animals? I know it seems like it, but they're not. There has not been one record of a killer whale attacking somebody in the wild, but there have been over 75 attacks in captivity. So what does that tell you? We're going to have a look at why throughout the second half, and have a look at some of the attacks, just to give you all a better understanding. But first, I'm going to read you a poem about whales in captivity. As a creative writing student, it's really moved me, and it said everything I wanted to say, but I can never quite find the right words. I'm not very good at poetry, but this poet has done it incredibly, and I've got to share it with you because it was amazing. So, don't put me in a cage and call it living. Don't call these endless circles swimming. Don't make me choose between backflips and eating. Don't tell me my only choice is loneliness or a beating. Don't make me pose with strangers that are too loud, who think I'm a clown, who cheer for my captivity, who reach out to touch me, and then go home and post on Tumblr how much they love me. Don't lift my tail and violate me. Don't sugarcoat my abuse with words like husbandry. And don't pump me full of drugs and subdue me. You know what you're doing to me. Don't keep me in hot chlorine and call it state of the art. I'm a goddamn whale living in an amusement park. I'm Icelandic, people. I'm hot, and it's never my season. But my misery is worth way more than my freedom. Don't call my behaviour normal, natural, and healthy, just so you can stay dirty, challenged, and unwealthy. And don't be surprised when I kill you. I'm going to die in this tank, so why shouldn't you? And don't kid yourself. Shamu hates you, because there's nothing to love about a monster who chains you. I thought it was amazing. Unfortunately, the poet who submitted it did it anonymously, and I've been trying to find out who it was for ages to congratulate them, because I thought to put yourself in the view of a of a whale was amazing. But we're going to talk about why they felt the need to write that in the first place now. So this is Tilikum. He's beautiful. He's 22 feet long and he weighs 12,000 pounds, so he's a big boy. He's sired 21 calves and 11 of them are still alive. He bred with and had a lot of stillbirths, unfortunately. He, lengthwise, is 4.5 of me. So he's really big. And you can see his dorsal fin, the one that, the pointy one, it's collapsed. And the reason for that is because of captivity, again. I guarantee you, if you go to a whale show, most of the orcas will have collapsed dorsal fins, but there's less than 1% of them in the wild that have collapsed dorsal fins. So there's been a lot of theories as to why this is. There's 3 main ones. The first is because of gravity. In the wild, just like dolphins, they spend a lot of time under the water, and they travel a long distance with like a weightless environment. On the other hand, in captivity, just like dolphins, they spend most of their time above the water, which causes their fin to collapse. That's just one theory. The second theory is dehydration, and that's because of the food they're given in captivity. If they hunt in the wild, it's all fresh, whereas the food they're given in captivity has been frozen before, and so it causes dehydration, which makes the dorsal fin collapse. And the third theory is simply illness and injury, and it's because they're all not gaining the nutrients that they need, and because they haven't adapted to living in captivity. They are made for living in the wild. And an orca's dorsal fin, it's a bit like a lion's mane. It's this whole symbol of pride, and obviously, no jokes please, the bigger they are, the more pride they've got. Can we not, please? And so this is Tilikum, and he was captured when he was 2, and he was owned by a place called Sealand of the Pacific, which was one of the first things that got built up. This is where it all started, and the industry that we now call SeaWorld started off as a tiny building in the docks, like this. That's literally it. It's in Canada. It's shut down now. But he lived with 2 other females, and they were called Haida and Nutka. And usually male whales, just like most other animals, are the more dominant. But in this social triangle, he was right at the bottom, and the 2 females would gang up on him and bully him, bless him. And he'd be covered head to toe in rakes overnight. These are rakes. It's when the teeth go on the skin of the whale, and they do it to get rid of their aggression. The reason they're so aggressive is because at this point, when they had finished the shows, they were put into small concrete tanks where there was about that much room in front of them, that much room behind them, and they couldn't move, really. And so, because they couldn't move, they got frustrated and needed to take their anger out. And so Tilikum, unfortunately, was the one that they decided to gang up on. Sorry. Oh, sorry, it's all... Yeah, sorry. This was the arena that Tilikum would perform in. I don't know about you, but I think that just looks a little bit bigger than a swimming pool, especially if you can see how big he is there. It's not nearly big enough, I don't think. Imagine something that majestic, being used to swimming hundreds of miles a day, because orcas swim more than dolphins because they're bigger. And now he's put in a concrete tank where he can barely move. And there's an orca here as well. So that's Tilikum, and that's one of the females. And because of this, Tilikum just had enough. He was done being treated like crap, and he was fed up of only being fed when trainers said that he could be fed. When he did something right, he was given food, and he'd had enough. Which leads us to our first death. This is Kelty Byrne. She was a 20-year-old marine biology student. She only worked part-time at Sea Life the Pacific because she wanted to become a swimmer. And she just wanted some extra money. She didn't really care about anything that went on. She just wanted some extra money. Unfortunately for her, it was during one of the shows, she accidentally slipped a little bit and her foot dipped in the water. And Tilikum had all this pent-up anger and aggression and went straight for her, got her foot, just like you saw before, and pulled her straight under. And this girl wanted to be a swimmer. And she was good at swimming, and he'd take her down and then come back up, and she had about 10 seconds to scream. She was saying, help me, I need someone to help me, I don't want to die. And then she was taken back under again. And there was nothing they could do, because she was going to die. They just kind of watched it happen. And then Sea Life had the audacity to cover it up and say that she drowned and that no whales were involved. And so this girl who wanted to be a swimmer was put down as a death as drowning, and I think that's sick. Which leads us to our second kill, because he was then shipped to SeaWorld in Orlando, which he's still there now. He was moved, and the people didn't know that he'd done anything wrong because they refused to put it in the report. And so Daniel P. Jukes, this isn't funny at all, but he was an escaped prisoner, and he went to the Shamu Stadium to watch a show, and he decided to stay there over hours. Now, it's a little bit odd because there are cameras everywhere. There's cameras in the pool, around the pool, in the touristy areas. It's covered everywhere. But for some reason, he wasn't picked up on the cameras. And then he decided he wanted to have this magical experience with an orca because he'd seen the trainers do it. And he must have thought, oh, they're used to people going in with them. I'll be fine. They seem like big dogs, really. I'm sure I'll be fine. He got in the wrong tank because he got in with Tilikum, and Tilikum had already been involved in somebody's death before. When he got in the tank, his clothes were ripped off from him, and Tilikum bit off his area, shall we say, and then he was found the next morning draped over Tilikum's back, completely naked. This is what happened to him. I can send that to you if you want to know more about what happened. But put it this way, it was really nasty. And instead of returning Tilikum to the wild then and there, because they cannot then say, oh, we didn't know he was an aggressive whale. Instead of returning him then and there, where he clearly should have been, they decided, oh, it was a one-time thing. It'll be fine. And it was then again covered up as drowning. So, unfortunately, I don't know what that was, sorry. And that's our third kill. This is the most kind of famous incident at SeaWorld. Does anybody know who this is? No? Her name is Dawn Brancho, and she was 40 years old when she died. She was a SeaWorld trainer for about 20 years, and she worked with Tilikum for the majority of her time at SeaWorld. Unfortunately, Tilly and her had this wonderful relationship that she put no doubt into the fact that he could hurt her. And so once they were rehearsing for a show, and it was before they went on, I don't want to say stage, but you know what I mean. It's before they were performing. And he was doing great at the beginning. He was doing everything that he should have, and he was being rewarded for it. But orcas can sense when you get to the bottom of your bucket because they can hear the ice sloshing, and it takes longer to feed them to say well done. And so Dawn asked him to do a full perimeter of the pool and wave his fin just to say hi. And so he did it, and he did it perfectly. And she whistled once, which means well done, you've done it right. And then she whistled twice, which means come and get a treat, you've done really well. But unfortunately, Tilly didn't hear either of these cues because he didn't go straight back to Dawn. And so he got really wound up that he'd done this perfect behavior, but he was being disciplined for it. And because he didn't come back straight away, she gave him a 5-second neutral response, which means you didn't do what I asked you to do, so you're not going to get anything, and we're going to move on. And after that, he started to get a little bit aggy, so she decided, right, I'm going to do a warm down with you. And to do a warm down, she lays on his tummy like this, and it's a relationship building exercise. It looks quite comfortable, really, but it's really, really dangerous. Tillicum grabbed her by her arm, like he did with the other two, pulled her under, and she was scalped, which means that her skull was torn apart from her body straight away. So she died instantly because she didn't think that anything like this would ever happen. And SeaWorld have covered it up by saying it was her fault because she had her hair in a ponytail. Look at all of these trainers with their hair in a ponytail. They didn't get attacked. Dawn got attacked because she was messing with a dangerous whale that shouldn't have been there in the first place. That's why it happened. And she's not even here to defend herself. How dare they? She can't say that it wasn't her. But they thought, well, she's not here to defend herself. Why not? She can't do anything about it. We'll lie. And so they did, and nobody found out. And he is still there. They won't let him perform normally anymore, but they still bring him into the tank to do the big splash at the end because he's the biggest orca they've got. So it's cruel and horrible. And this broke my heart. Kalina was the first baby whale to be born into captivity. And it's a bit confusing. Her name is Kalina and her mother's name is Katina. So bear with me. Katina fell pregnant and gave birth. And this had happened before, but they had never lived for longer than 3 weeks. Whereas this one survived, and it lived till 25 years old, to be fair. But when it was born, it attracted a lot of public attention. Obviously, you'd want to go and see a baby whale. They're cute. And so everybody came to see it, and it boosted their profits. They got a lot of money from it. And then they thought it would be really cool if we could put the baby whale in with the mother whale when they do the shows to try and promote this idea of family. But the baby whale, obviously, was a toddler and didn't want to cooperate, and so it would throw a tantrum and say no. And due to that, the mother would then have to stop doing what she was doing to say, stop, like, listen to me, and it would ruin the whole show. And SeaWorld trainers got really wound up about it, but they couldn't separate them now that they had been together because people would think that it was wrong. And so one night they decided, well, we'll just get rid of the baby altogether and ship her to a different park. They separated the whales and they put the baby in a crate and shipped it off. Katina swam to the bottom of the tank in the corner and, for a very quiet whale usually, started making the most horrific sets of noises that you've ever heard. And she wouldn't move. She came up every now and again to breathe and then went back down. She was actually given Valium for about 6 months because she had depression. They didn't know what the noises were, so they got a load of researchers to come in, and they concluded that she was grieving and she was crying out for her baby, who was on the other side of America. And they like to say that they support family because they recognize the important bond between a mother and a calf. But they shipped them away from each other and she never got to see her baby again. Celebrities have started to get involved as well. You've got Jennifer Aniston, Russell Brand, loads of other people. They're putting up tweets, they're doing video clips, they're doing as much as they can, but it doesn't particularly matter that they're celebrities if it's you lot that can change things. It's the general public, because the more people that know what goes on, the less people that will go. It's really as simple as that. Things like this shouldn't be happening. It's inhumane, and I'm hoping in 50 years' time we'll look back on it and say, what a brutal time that was, which we do about circuses. This is a marine circus. It's exactly the same thing. And so that's what we're going to try and do together, and I really hope that I've managed to change your minds a little bit. So thank you so much for listening to me. Special thank yous are on the programs. You've all been a really wonderful audience, so thank you. Any questions? We'll go here first.
Are you against shark fin soup?
Yes, I am. Okay, Leighton, what's your question?
Where do dolphins live?
In the sea, or in a tank, but we don't think they live there.
No, like what kinds of seas?
Well, all the seas. There's dolphins in every single sea. Just different types.
What about sea lions? You haven't mentioned that.
No, it doesn't.
I've seen sea lions before.
Yeah, I have too. I kissed one, actually. I think it was racist. It didn't like me. No, sea lions, I feel their emotional range isn't quite as developed as ours. And so while I don't agree with it, I don't find it as pressing an issue as things like this, because there's no slaughtering for sea lions. There's beyond massacres for dolphins and whales. So.
Is there any human benefit from that?
What, from captivity or from releasing them? Is there any benefit from releasing them for us? Us not being terrible human beings? No, and that's a common thing that comes up a lot. I feel that they should have open pens, and so they should have a really large area in the sea where they can still hunt, but they are fed every now and again to help them. Oof.
Isn't putting them into captivity a bit like culling them? Like, you've got to cut down or there'll be too many and put other marine animals at risk?
That's not putting them in captivity. That doesn't help with that. You're slaughtering animals at the end of the day, or giving them a lifetime of being in a jail cell. It's horrible.
Don't slaughter deer.
No.
Sure.
Well, we eat deer, but it doesn't give us mercury poisoning, does it?
If we didn't get mercury poisoning, would it be alright to cull them to eat them?
What, dolphins? But they do give you mercury poisoning. Well, then, for benefit of food, I don't see an issue. But not the way that they're. And it's not so much about killing them and eating them, if the mercury poisoning wasn't an issue. It's the captivity. It's this. It's been happening since Flipper came about. So probably, when did Flipper come about? Like, I'm looking at you because I'm thinking you, in the 60s, yeah.
Do you know what's happened to the population of whales and dolphins in the wild since captivity?
Dolphins aren't an endangered species, so it's not so much about that. That's not really much to worry about in that respect. But it's the ones that we do have, we're still doing these horrible things to them and thinking that it's okay just because there's more than a few.
Why do you think, even when faced with all this international exposure by the press, Japan won't relent and won't put a stop to this? Because I don't think there's any. Because I have seen the code, and they said that there's no sort of economic benefit.
Yeah, they call it tradition, which is absolutely ridiculous, but.
Why the government on that side, like the Japanese one?
The Japanese government, like I said, they call it tradition.
But is it tradition?
No, it's not. It's massacre.
Obviously, there's like animal welfare is considered to be quite a big thing, like the RFPCA, things like that. Would they not get involved in something like this to prevent it?
Well, Rico Barry said these Save Dolphins group, these Greenpeace, he turned around and he said, where are they? We need their help. And it's really dangerous. Like 4 people have died from doing protests against things like this. A group of, it wasn't the same thing, but a group of surfers tried to do it first before they sent people in, and they were prodded with the dolphin spears and pushed into the water and given quite deep wounds, and so for safety values. And as soon as you start to do that, the Japanese put you in jail, and then you have to get bailed out. It's a bit of a tricky one. Leighton, go on.
Why did chemicals get taken away from the children?
What, in captivity? Because the children sometimes mess up the shows for the adult ones, and then they get a bad reputation because they've got a badly trained whale, because it's only a baby, so it doesn't really know what it's doing. Well, it's taken to another park. The baby tends to be okay, but it's the mum that doesn't cope very well. Yeah, you can go on, if you, so many people say, I need captivity because I want my children to learn about these animals. But there's no educational purpose of sticking them in and watching them jump through hoops. If you want to give your children an education, and if you want to show your children what these animals are, go on a safari boat trip and you can see these wild animals in their natural form, and you can actually learn what they are. I don't have an issue with research at all, as long as they are treated properly and kept in a natural environment and they're not surrounded by screaming children. I understand that we as people need to research these animals. They are incredible, so we do need to learn more about them.
What's the difference between that getting kept in a tank and a monkey getting kept in one of those glass cages? Because monkeys are just disappearing.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely no difference, but my talk isn't about monkeys. Right, maybe one more if we've got any. Molly. It's against both.
So if it goes through, is it going to the Japanese government or is it going to like the sea?
It goes to the Japanese government because without the capturing process, there's no dolphins for them to get and therefore know SeaWorld. Okay? Everybody happy? Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome.